Indian Chamber of Commerce. She She is a gold medalist postgraduate in environmental system management. She has spent over 13 years of her she has spent 13 years of her professional journey across various dimensions of sustainability. She likes to focus on impact driven sustainability solutions, including growth. She considers this discipline to the multidisciplinary by nature, one that needs a homogeneous mix of science, logic, strategy, ethos, and communication to drive desired outcomes. She worked as an agent of change across the value chain of sustainability, from thinking to impact and back. In the last 13 years of her career, she has worked across techno-commercial sustainability functions that involve deep functional knowledge. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Alka. That was a long introduction. I don't think I deserve such a long introduction, but thank you so much. Thanks, Professor Singh, for having me here today. And let me start with a few things over here. First, a very happy, safe, and a super sustainable New Year to all of you. Slightly delayed wishes, but I definitely would like to extend the greetings. You have to bear with this froggy voice that I have because I have also been, I tested positive a few days back, getting better. Just about completed 7 days of my quarantine. So I will be speaking, but you might hear me coughing a bit, or I may need to take a few breaks. I hope that is okay. I don't sound so bad, but it just so happened that my voice is completely gone on a day like this. But nonetheless, very very happy to be here today. And yeah, I hope all of you on the call are doing well and safe. And let's keep this as a free flowing discussion. That will also give me a chance to take breaks and maybe cough and get my voice eased out a little for you. So let me try and share my screen at the stage. Can someone give me a shout if my screen is visible?
Yes, ma'am. Your screen is visual.
All right, cool. Okay, so before I start, maybe I would assume this to be your somewhere in the middle of this session that is happening right now, right? I mean, this would have started on the 10th, right, Professor Singh?
Yes, ma'am. 10th.
Yes. Okay. And I went through the agenda and I saw that different people from different backgrounds have been coming and talking to you about ESG reporting. I will definitely talk to you about my own sector, which is more consumer goods, but I'll try and focus on manufacturing overall as a sector and then deep dive into what Marico has been doing on ESG reporting. But just out of curiosity, I want to understand from you, based on everything that you've learned so far, where would you rate? So imagine yourself to be a CEO of a company, okay? Give me a score of maybe 1 to 10 of where would you place ESG rating or reporting in your agenda or in your massive to-do list that you might have as a CEO of an organization. What would be the total score that you would provide to ESG reporting or ESG impact as a topic? Anyone? I actually can't see you guys now, so maybe if you can put your video on while speaking, that will also be great. Would anyone like to talk about that?
Ma'am, it's 9 is the minimum and 10 is the maximum.
Okay, that's amazing to hear, Professor Singh, and I'm sure the reason why I asked you that score is whatever that gap was from being a perfect 10, I try to influence you as much as possible to get to that. So I guess I have an easier job to do, since you say that the score in the room is almost 9. That's absolutely the kind of importance that this topic needs to get. And let's see why. Okay. Okay. All right. So just to give you a little bit of an understanding of what we are trying to cover today, in the next hour. And again, I don't want to be the only one talking in the next 1 hour. So please chip in, share your point of view whenever you need to. I'll talk to you a little bit about ESG disclosure because, as Alka mentioned, she mentioned a lot of things about me. But one of the things is I've just changed sides in a corporate. I've actually spent my entire professional career so far in consulting, where I've been writing different types of reports for companies all around the globe. So I thought this could be a very good opportunity to possibly, slice out some of the key learnings that I have had as a person and share that with you in terms of why is it important to understand what ESG disclosures are, whatever profile you have in an industry, whether you're the CEO, whether you're the COO, whether you are a production manager, whether you're a supplier, it's very, very important to understand what ESG disclosures are and how it is impacting the future of my business, not just the present, but the future of my business. So we're going to spend a little time on that to start with. Then I'm going to bring in some kind of a relevance to the topic that Professor Singh wanted me to speak on, which is understanding, what is it in the manufacturing sector that is really working, what kind of an environment is being created for the manufacturing sector, what are the unique value propositions for ESG reporting, right? So we'll understand that. Then we'll put a little spotlight on my own organization, Marico, which has actually been doing, phenomenal work, and I'm very proud to be associated with this organization. It's been less than a year actually that I've been with Marico. I joined last Feb, but I've been part of one reporting cycle for the organization, and I understand that they actually practice what they preach, rather they practice more and preach less. So I'm going to share some excerpts from that knowledge with you as well. And then lastly, I want to hear from all of you. I got that score as 9, and we are trying to aim at getting a full perfect 10 for, let's say, whatever profile I am at, whichever stakeholder I am. I consider ESG to have a perfect 10 score, which is top the charts in terms of my strategic alignment. Where are the opportunity windows for India, and how do we actually garner our efforts to be able to let India have a ESG-led future? So in a nutshell, this is what I have in mind, and I'm happy to discuss anything and everything associated with this, towards the end of the call with all of you. So the first thing, right, ESG disclosures. I think, and maybe I will do a little poll at the end of it as well. To understand, ESG disclosures, you first have to understand what is ESG, right? And I'm sure everyone on this call understands this. You've been having an entire workshop on this. If you ask me, the simplest definition that I have created for myself when I talk about ESG is ESG is a measure of the overall sustainability impact that any organization is creating. You can be in academia, you can be in government, you can be a private practitioner, you can be a consumer, you can be a brand owner, a large corporate, an MSME who's a supplier to a large corporate, whatever profile you are at, if you are trying to quantify or measure the overall impact of sustainability. Sustainability is a huge word. It's a broad, sometimes a little vague as well. When I'm trying to quantify and measure the actual impact of sustainability, that's when E, S, and G aspects come into the picture. And if someone is actually able to measure ESG disclosures or ESG impact of an organization in a certain way, that, trust me, friends, is a lens for that organization to create sustainable value. So I took the liberty of picking up, this report. I think it's been launched day before yesterday by the World Economic Forum. This is a global risk perception survey, right? And WEF had basically asked governments, corporates, a huge sample to identify the most severe risks, not just related to environmental risks or sustainability related or societal risks. Overall, if you were trying to name the top 10 risks, you see the first three are related to environment, the next three are related to social. So your out of your E, S, and G, your ENS is actually dominating the most severe risks on a global scale for the next decade. One, food for thought to keep in mind. Now, how did we all reach here, right? So I'm just going to step back in history. Now you've seen this is the present, right? This is where we are. This is what the immediate data tells us globally. I'm going to take a step back now and talk a little bit about history and what has actually led us to a state where climate change becomes the topmost risk that the world is talking about. If you see, this entire buzz around sustainability, environment management, social value creation, this all started sometime in the 1980s or 90s, right? Where you had all kinds of laws that were coming up, the regulatory compliances that were coming up. And we could definitely call that era as the regulatory era. Then around the 2000s, let's say, we started having the COPs and the international conventions, and that's when the policy era started. So there were a lot of policies which were literally, shadowing these kinds of regulatory compliances. And those policies actually were used as enablers by different types of stakeholders to start even ideating on what the future would look like. Another decade, and we saw, the Medha Patkars of the world and the Greenpeaces doing a lot of activism. We would see, big red flags being raised for corporates who were not complying with some of these environmental policies. There were a lot of public protests. We would hear of, how there is a public litigation that has been filed for a company that has failed to meet the societal demands or the environmental demands. So that era can definitely be called as an activist era. Now, the last era, this is possibly, I could say here, the pre-pandemic era, was possibly the investor era, because then investors started understanding that where does my future lie? My future lies at a place where all of these three eras that have gone will converge in a certain way. And I will have to look at areas where there are the highest amount of risks, and those risks can be reimagined as opportunities. So investors started coming in and they started actually influencing a lot of changes. And here I'm talking about global investors, right? Global institutional investors, impact investors, they started talking about how can we leverage the current risk-driven scenario and try to see what kind of opportunities could be created in the future. This is all pre-pandemic. Start 2020, everything started, changing. There was a new reality that is formed, and now we are talking about the next normal. So the next normal is where all of these different eras have to coexist and have to, just like this little graphic that I have here on the screen, they have to all together move towards the future. So all the good forces, all the positive, shifts that we've seen in all these eras, somewhere have to come together and create what we call as the transformation era. And this is the era where stakeholder capitalism will play the highest part. This is the era where the ESG section of an annual report of a company will play the highest part in terms of understanding, what exactly the organization is doing to be able to have a social license to operate, to how is it restoring the natural capital, how is it creating intellectual capital that is low carbon in nature. So that's the era that we are all heading towards, and that's the era that we all need to work towards to be able to create or shape a sustainable future. And we, trust me, friends, have really less time. There's a meteoric rise of ESG. being in the corporate and being able to work with a lot of corporates in the past, I've seen that ESG is slowly becoming the topmost agenda for the C-suite of any organization, whether in India or globally. And there are different types of risks. This little diagram over here, I know you cannot see it right now, but when I send you the presentation, you'll be able to see this is just an illustration of the risks that we saw. This is also from the World Economic Forum report, where they're trying to show how the risks are also interconnected. The environmental risks and the social risks cannot be seen in silos. They are all interconnected. So if you are trying to actually mitigate one type of risk, you have to have your eyes and ears open on what are the other opportunities that you're creating to solve the associated risks, right? So given that this is where we are moving towards, as humanity, let's say, there's obviously huge amount of money that is being pumped into ESG as a market. We've seen recently, as recent as this year, 2022, there's about $40.5 trillion that's there in the ESG data-driven assets. We've seen CEOs or C-suite, as I mentioned, they are actually using ESG to be able to drive competitiveness within their sector, within their markets, and so on. So there is definitely a sort of demand that they're seeing for them to be able to respond to ESG as an area. And then customers, the other end of the spectrum, once again, there was a recent survey I was reading about by the Boston Consulting Group, where even during the pandemic, they had done a global survey for consumers to ask them, are you ready to pay an additional price? And 90% of consumers have said that they're ready to pay a higher price for sustainable products, provided there is clear-cut information on why is that product sustainable. You can't just add a label and say my product is green or it's organic. The consumers have to be made part of the journey. And if the consumer is made part of the journey, if they understand that the product is actually, they are part of the organization's sustainability journey, then he or she is ready to make that additional, pay that additional price to be able to take an eco-conscious lifestyle choice. So something that we need to keep in mind. Now, of course, mainstream stakeholders are rising. We've all seen, the letter from Mr. Larry Fink of BlackRock and some other, huge fund managers talking about why is it important to move away from something called shareholder primacy. So not just augment the shareholders' interests, but look at your stakeholder overall. Most importantly, have a stakeholder capitalism or a responsible and socially inclusive growth-based journey. So there's an increasing demand from the investors, and there's an expanding expectations from businesses. The two cogwheels are actually moving together to be able to create impact, and that is definitely being seen. Now just pulling away from what the context looks like and just looking at ESG disclosures as a canvas, right? You get confused in this slide. So would I. When I think about ESG disclosures, there is a whole gamut of things that are happening. And maybe even as we are speaking today, there are somewhere, at some corner of the world, some people would be sitting together and thinking, how can we have another kind of a framework developed? And how can we ask corporates to respond to that framework? It's a very confusing journey. Pardon me. And as a corporate, if you are, if you join an organization and you see that an organization is reporting to all of these, you basically don't know where to start, because then as a sustainability manager or as a sustainability controller of that organization, you're basically not doing anything else but just reporting, because every standard is different. Every framework asks for a different set of data. Some are voluntary, some are evaluating you without you even knowing about them. So you somewhere get lost amongst the number of ESG disclosures that are there. The good news is that there is a shift that we are seeing from a long-term standpoint. There are, initiatives where some of these major frameworks are planning to come together. They're planning to merge and create a comprehensive framework which will possibly address all the different types of value drivers or materiality issues and provide the corporate with like a consolidated, standardized set of criteria or guidelines that could be used for ESG disclosures. But this is still new. And what kind of success will this have in the long run? We are yet to see. But there's some positive movement. All right. Now, before I move into the sectoral perspective, any questions or any thoughts right now? We can possibly take one or two of them.
And one request.
Yes, please.
Actually, maybe in another 3 minutes, this meeting may be over because we are not having this packet.
Okay.
So I'll send you a link and we'll switch to the new meeting because this is like a
Sure.
free thing. So I'll send you the link and then
That's absolutely fine. So should we join there now? Because I'm just about to start another section.
Yeah, that will be
So-
better. That will be better, ma'am.
Okay, fine.